call, 5-minute call on behalf of the Labour Party, Reno Terikatini.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, e tūtautoko ana hau I tēnei pire te Maritime Crimes Amendment Bill. And Sir, it's a pleasure to speak in the first reading of this bill. We're speaking in support of this bill. Sir, this is one of those bills that the House, it's subject matter, I guess, that we hope would never eventuate or come into reality, because, Sir, this is about, terrorism or combating anti-terrorism, particularly on the sea and on platforms, which I would assume would be like oil rigs and the like. So, Sir, we're doing our bit as good global citizens to support this legislation, which is all about New Zealand ratifying our obligations as a signatory to the conventions and then the protocols to the conventions and which form the basis of this bill. So it has been well traversed by previous speakers. So, Sir, I do endorse this bill, but, Sir, I do hope that certain definitions contained within this bill don't really seep out into the public lexicon of the general public, because, Sir, there are some really quite scary terms within this bill. If we do look at these new definitions, which I understand are contained within the protocols, terms like a BCN weapon, which means a biological weapon, a chemical weapon, or a nuclear weapon. We don't really want to be hearing those sorts of terms freely spoken out there. But, Sir, that is the reality of what this bill seeks to address. Goodness knows, in this day and age, we are seeing daily almost acts of terrorism happening around the globe. So we do need to be vigilant as a country. And the enactment of this legislation does just that. But, Sir, I'd like to just highlight on one specific clause, and that's the new Section 3A that will be inserted into the maritime legislation, Sir. And that says, Sir, that this Act does not apply to any act that occurs in a situation of armed conflict. So, Sir, if armed conflict is to break out, basically we can just park this up and none of it will apply. And so I think, Sir, that is the danger, I guess, that we are facing daily as we look around the world and see what's happening out there in the South China Sea. We're seeing the deployment of, naval fleets being moved around the world. If we look over to the Mediterranean Sea, massive aircraft carriers from the US, from European countries, from Russia, from all over the world. There's a lot of tension, I guess, out there in the maritime space. A lot of naval exercises that are taking place, and so, Sir, I guess thank goodness that everything's calm and people are acting with restraint out there at the moment. But certainly we don't want any conflict to arise. And if it did, Sir, well, this piece of legislation doesn't really apply at all. And goodness knows how those pieces of hardware will deal with terrorists on the high seas. But, Sir, this is this does implement our international obligations. So I actually think the bill doesn't really go far enough, because we're dealing with, in this legislation, Sir, a very high bar of terrorist activity. We're talking about biological weapons, nuclear weapons, and all of the related components that might make up those weapons of mass destruction. So I actually think the legislation should be just applied to all forms of weapons that are involved in terrorism around the world. If we do look at what's going on in the Middle East and Syria and the conflict zones around the world, and to be honest, Sir, I do get confused with all of the different parties and moderates and terrorists and goodness knows who all the other parties involved. At the end of the day, Sir, they require supply lines. They require supply lines to get them armed, to actually get involved in their war terrorist activities. And so, sir, I believe this bill could go further and actually not just focus on those extreme weapons, but all forms of weapons that are involved in terrorist activities. But apart from those few remarks, sir, I do support this bill and I commend it at this first reading.
Mr. Speaker.
Todd